The version of the General Appropriations Bill that we will put into a vote on third reading is one that is truly responsive to the needs of the Filipino people in our country. A budget that Congress can be proud of. One question often asked is this: where was the 255 billion pesos from flood control projects reallocated? It was allocated mainly towards the three key sectors identified by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., that is education, health, and agriculture. Specifically, 201.1 billion pesos out of the 255 billion pesos were allocated towards these three key sectors. 56.6 billion pesos towards education, 90.7 billion pesos towards health, and 53.7 billion pesos towards agriculture. The budget for fiscal year 2026 will contain the highest budget education in history. With the 56.6 billion pesos added by the House of Representatives, the total budget for the education sector will be 1.28 trillion pesos, the highest ever in the history of our country. This is the first time ever in our history that we have breached the 4% international benchmark. And not only that, the current education sector's budget translates to 4.1% of GDP. The 63.2 billion pesos budget of the Basic Education Facilities Program under DepEd will translate to around 25,200 new and rehabilitated classrooms. This comprises 63% of the 40,000 classrooms envisioned by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to be built and rehabilitated by the year 2028. Also, this is the first year that we will be able to fully fund the implementation of the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, or UACTE, since it was passed in 2017. In fiscal year 2026, we will be able to fully fund the 12 billion peso deficiency to state universities and colleges, something that the SUCs have been clamoring for the last 5 years. With a total funding of 52.2 billion pesos for UACTE, CHED-TES, CHED-TDP, TES the STEP, and TES the TWSP, we will be able to provide scholarships to a total of 2.49 million learners. Under the health cluster, with the 90.7 billion added by the House of Representatives, the total budget for the health sector will amount to 411.2 billion pesos. Of this, the House of Representatives provided an additional 60 billion pesos for the subsidy of PhilHealth towards the improvement of benefits. And with this, the subsidy for PhilHealth in fiscal year 2026 will amount to a total of 113 billion pesos. We have also provided a total of 49.1 billion pesos for MAIFIP to actualize the directive of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to provide zero balance billing for indigent patients in all government hospitals. Under the agriculture cluster, with the 53.7 billion pesos added by the House of Representatives, the total budget for the agriculture sector will amount to 292.9 billion pesos. Of this, 10 billion pesos is provided for the presidential assistance for farmers and fisherfolk, expected to benefit 1.43 million farmers and fisherfolk. 74.5 billion pesos will be provided towards the construction and rehabilitation of farm-to-market roads and irrigation infrastructure. Moreover, 30 billion pesos is provided under the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund towards the provision of farm mechanization and machineries and other farm inputs. Lahat po ito ay para matulungan ang ating mga bayaning magsasaka na bumaba ang kanilang gastusin at mapataas ang kanilang ani at kita. With regard to unprogrammed appropriations, tinanggal na po ng Kongreso ang infrastruktura sa listahan ng mga pwedeng paggamitan ng unprogrammed appropriations. Partikular, mula sa dating tinatawag na SAGIP. Ito po ay hakbang ng Kongreso laban sa posibleng pang-aabuso ng unprogrammed appropriations. Ang dating SAGIP, ngayon ay magiging strengthening assistance for government social programs. At ang tanging mga social programs na nakatuon sa edukasyon, kalusugan at social pension na lamang ang pwedeng ipasok dito. Ibig sabihin po nito, at nais ko po itong bigyang diin, na wala ng flood control projects, wala ng mga tulay, o wala ng mga kalsada na pwedeng hugutin mula sa unprogrammed appropriations para sa taong 2026. Ang tanging pahihintulutan na lamang na infrastructure projects ay ang mga Foreign Assisted Projects o FAPs. Ano po ang FAPs? Ito po ang mga proyekto na pinupondohan ng ibang bansa o ng mga multilateral or international bodies tulad ng World Bank at Asian Development Bank. Hindi po natin maaaring tanggalin ang unprogrammed appropriations sa ilalim ng FAPs sapagkat hindi po natin pwedeng talikuran ang ating mga napagkasundoan sa international na level. Nais ko pong bigyang diin na hindi din po kasama ang unprogrammed appropriations sa 6.793 trillion na national budget. Sa kasalukuyan, wala pong pondo ang unprogrammed appropriations. Mapopondahan lamang ang unprogrammed appropriations kung may sobra o bagong kita ang gobyerno sa susunod na taon. Ibig sabihin po nito, kung walang dagdag na kita ang gobyerno, walang mapopondohan sa unprogrammed appropriations. At ang huli ko pong sasabihin patungkol sa usapin ng unprogrammed appropriations ay ito. Sisiguraduhin po ng inyong Kongreso na hindi maaabuso ang unprogrammed appropriations sa taong 2026 at sa mga susunod na taon. But today, more than just the numbers, I want to talk about the process of getting here today. This budget cycle is unprecedented. And to be able to pass the budget on time, despite all the complexities that we needed to navigate over the past 2 months, we needed to work very, very hard. Moreover, we needed to navigate through all of these complexities while implementing sweeping reforms in long-standing budget processes and traditions. First, we made sure that the budget deliberations are open and transparent. As per our commitment, all committee hearings and all plenary deliberations, as well as the deliberations of the Budget Amendments Review Subcommittee, were all live-streamed. Second, we engaged with civil society organizations. Accredited CSOs were invited to all deliberations. We conducted the first ever People's Budget Review. CSOs were allowed to field their questions to agencies through the vice chairpersons of the Committee on Appropriations. Moreover, the inputs of the civil society organizations were incorporated into the budget. To name a few, we added funding towards special education programs like IPED, Madrasa, and SPED. We increased the funding for the build-out of classrooms. We increased funding for active transport, increased funding for the new Agrarian Emancipation Act, just to name a few. And third, and most important reform, is that we abolished the small committee. Wala na pong small committee sa loob ng 20th Congress. Ang meron po ngayon ay ang Budget Amendments Review Subcommittee o yung tinatawag natin na BARC. The Budget Amendments Review Subcommittee deliberated on all the proposed amendments from the agencies, the institutional amendments that we would need to incorporate into the budget. And again, all of the deliberations of the BARC were live streamed. About 20 hours total of deliberations were live streamed, open for the public. We made sure that the public will see every single line item. Gusto po namin siguraduhin na makikita ng publiko line by line, kung saan po napupunta ang bawat piso ng lahat ng mga amyenda. And moreover, the task of the BARC was unprecedented. We needed to realign 255 billion in funds that were removed from DPWH towards other agencies. And with that, I thank the 23 members of the Budget Amendments Review Subcommittee who toiled through almost 20 hours of marathon meetings and whose collective wisdom enabled us to reallocate the 255 billion pesos in the best way possible. Next, in compliance with the constitutional requirement, all amendments were incorporated before the second reading approval. At tulad na aming ipinangako, wala na pong galaw matapos maaprubahan ng GAB sa ikalawang pagbasa. All members of the House of Representatives were provided a copy of the second reading version of the GAB before its approval on second reading. And for the first time in recent history, the period of individual amendments was open to the members. I am happy to report that we have successfully implemented these reforms and have successfully navigated through all of the complexities of the past 2 months to deliver today a version of the General Appropriations Bill that we will vote on third reading. A version of the General Appropriations Bill that the 20th Congress can be proud of. And we would not be able to reach this point without everyone's tireless efforts and collective wisdom. First, to our colleagues in the House, for your inputs and for working tirelessly these past 2 months through marathon committee hearings and plenary deliberations until 4 o'clock in the morning. The collective wisdom of the majority, the minority, and the independents shaped the General Appropriations Bill to its current form. Thank you for bearing with me and with the Committee on Appropriations as we navigated through the complexities and the reforms. Likewise, to the departments and agencies, to our partners in the executive and the judiciary, thank you for working with us in crafting the GAB. To our partners in civil society, to the civil society organizations who participated in the budget process, thank you for your very invaluable insights. This is the first time we've embarked on this partnership, and we are grateful for your patience and understanding as we've been making adjustments throughout the process. We look forward to working with you in the succeeding budget cycles in refining our engagement mechanisms and models for the upcoming budget seasons.